Doctor said you got PCOS. Now go on, girl, just lose some weight. Till I took the symptoms into my own hands and reversed them naturally. So I became a dietitian to help my sisters feel the best they've ever felt. Take a step in my direction if you wanna prove them wrong and take control of yourself. Join a sister and a mister.
Welcome, Dr. Pateguana. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so excited for this podcast episode. Welcome back. You've been on the podcast before.
You're Hall of Famer.
Thank you. I was telling you guys, I think it was twice I was on, and I still follow you guys. I love talking with you. I love being here. I love the work you're doing. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you. And likewise as well, we love following your Instagram page and all your content as well. And your episodes have been like one of our most popular episodes as well when we talk about fasting and other topics. And it's just been really great to have you on. So it's really good this is our third time together, the trilogy.
Yes.
That is very true because, of course, I talk about PCOS all the time, but it's so nice to talk to such a large audience and to spread the message. Like, I feel really lucky to be here. Thanks, guys.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely. And for those who may not be aware of you, can you give a little bit of your background?
Absolutely. So I'm a naturopathic doctor by training. This is actually my 20th year. So I graduated 20 years ago and went
Amazing.
straight into clinical practice and have been working in the exact same field ever since. I started right away focusing on nutrition. I thought I was going to do something else, but life ended up taking me to working with people with metabolic syndrome. So obesity, diabetes, that was my focus. Weight loss, that was, definitely the focus. I lived in actually Mozambique, where I'm originally from. I was raised in Canada, but moved there right after the naturopathic college. And so worked there for 10 years, had a large clinic, multidisciplinary clinic. I had a gym. And so our focus was weight loss for women. And it was great because I was the only person doing it. So I had ended up developing a lot of experience. And then over the years, realizing that women were getting pregnant, women that had struggled with fertility were getting pregnant. And so realizing that there was some type of connection with the diets. And then, of course, fast forward quite a bit, 10 years later, I moved back to Canada. I was pregnant with my second child, had learned quite a bit, had realized that, of course, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance had a huge impact on our reproductive health. And at that point, I had connected the dots. And so it was a good time for me to join forces with Dr. Jason Fung and Megan Ramos since I was back in Toronto. And I started working with the intensive dietary medicine program, IDM program in the clinics in Toronto as a naturopath. And eventually our program went online. So now for the past 8 years, I've been with the fasting method with Jason Fung and Megan, the fastingmethod.com program. And I was a coach for a long time, still am part of the program, but I'm a health consultant and I mostly do large groups and master classes. We have a podcast as well, just like you guys, the Fasting Method podcast.
Fasting Method podcast. Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And in 2020, Dr. Jason Fung and I wrote a book together, which of course, as you can imagine, was a dream, the PCOS plan. So that's what I think I spoke with you guys about the last time.
Yes, I was going to say, since then, how have you been doing? Have you been seeing a lot of women with PCOS? Have you had a lot of feedback from the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the book has been, it was amazing because it was a way to get the word out to women all over the world. It's now been translated into various languages. I wouldn't be able to give you the list because I don't know it off by heart.
That's amazing.
And I get messages all the time. So it's really great. It's really, really great because,
Congrats.
it does have a big focus on fertility, but it's not the only focus. I would actually say that the focus isn't on fertility, but it does help. And I think that's what women end up sharing with me quite a bit, overcoming fertility. But there's so much more, I get a lot of postmenopausal women who purchase the book and read the book.
Oh, that's
Because
awesome.
they wonder, like, did I have PCOS and what could I have done? And so they're very interested in reading the book because they know that, those that were diagnosed with PCOS, they know that they were not treated properly. The focus wasn't correct. And so now they're wondering, what could have been done or what should I have done?
Yeah.
And women love to share the book with younger women, which is really great.
Where would you recommend for listeners to purchase the book? Amazon or your website?
Yeah, it's definitely on Amazon. It's all
Cool.
over. It's really
Nice.
all over, but easily on Amazon. I think if you go to the fasting method program.com, there is a place where you can look at all the books, because Dr. Fung and Megan have written 7 or 8 books at this point, right? The Obesity Code was the first one, very popular book, and many more after that. And mine was, I think, his 7th book, but he's written 2 or 3 more after that.
What got you into this in the first place? Like, how was your experience with fasting? And I'm sure you had an experience with fasting before you even wrote the book.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, at that point I was already with the program for a few years. But my journey started, as I said, becoming a naturopath. So I was in, early 20s, went into naturopathic college. Initially, I wanted to be a medical doctor and wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with my own medical doctor, whatever. So I decided to become a naturopath because I thought I want to be that person that people can go to that is going to look at them holistically as a whole person, not as like this organ, that, and that organ, that. I felt like I wasn't being well cared for as a patient. So that's why I became a naturopath. At the time, I had IBS and I was very unhappy. And then, as I told you, when I finished naturopathic college, I went to Mozambique and I thought I was going to work with mummies and babies. I didn't know I did end up working with mummies and babies. I just didn't know that it would be in this way, right? I thought I was going to go into the villages and work on nutrition in Mozambique, which is where I'm originally from, but left when I was 1 year old. So it was like a dream to go back and
Yeah.
live and work there. When I got there, the Minister of Health said, no, you must open a clinic in the city and help people with weight loss. I wasn't given a choice. And that's what I did. So that's how I went into this field. I had no interest in
They
weight
just
loss.
force you into it.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I was there for 6 months already, trying to work, trying to get a license, and that's the way that it was in Mozambique. And before then, that was 20 years ago. But before then, it was even like, okay, you will be a doctor, and don't want to get into politics, but that's how it was. Okay.
I see.
And so when I got there, I really did think that I was going to go into the countryside and work with, the villages and learn and teach. But that's not what happened. I ended up working with, and I wasn't prepared. So what that meant was I had to come up with a strategy because the line was out the door. He was completely right. There was a huge interest in weight loss
I'm sure
epidemic
so
of
many people had PCOS and had no idea.
That's right. And I didn't keep in mind that I was in my city is Maputo, which is the capital of Mozambique. So it is a very it's a city full of expats. It's just full of people, right? Like just full of very on the border of South Africa, close to the border of South Africa. So I mean it's a busy city. And so there's people from all over the world that I was seeing. And because I was the only person doing this, and I was quite young, right? I was probably 26, yeah, at the time. 26. I just told you my age. I'm 46. And so exactly that. I went into it fresh, right? Fresh off of naturopathic college. You don't learn weight loss diets in naturopathic college. But you also don't have the same guidelines that nutritionists or dietitians have, right? So I had this opportunity to look at what works and what doesn't. And I often say this, I said this in my book, that the people that I worked with were wonderful, very gracious, generous, forgiving, wonderful guinea pigs because I learned with them. And
Mhm.
so I was very successful. I was very successful because I was young. It was easy for me to learn and change and switch and try this and try that. And then eventually, as you said, I didn't know, my focus was not PCOS, and I didn't know that I had PCOS. I was very, very thin until very recently. I was very, very thin. So thin, in fact, that the big joke when people came to my clinic was, I want to lose weight, but I don't want to look like you.
Oh
That
my
Oh
was a
my
God.
joke.
goodness.
Because I was really thin, really, really
It's
thin. And
very
this is
rude though.
important. Oh,
Yeah.
it's cultural. Like now people say, oh, you look good. You've gained some weight. And I say, thank you.
I know, right? That's how it is in like in some cultures. It'll be like, oh, you don't look good. You need to eat more and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely cultural. So this is important because there's a lot of young women out there who I guess would assume that they don't have PCOS because they don't have the weight concern. I didn't have any weight concerns. So I didn't know I had PCOS, and I didn't know that many of the women, like you said, Talene, that I was working with had PCOS. And women didn't really talk to me much about fertility because they were there to lose weight. And most of them were in their 40s, right? So they were struggling with weight, probably, I don't want to say perimenopausal, but many thought they were, or they had their menopause early, right? Things like that. But this didn't really come up in our conversation because they were there to lose weight. My diet was so effective that they lost weight. And what ended up happening, and very early on in my career, way before I was even trying to conceive myself, and I think there's a lot of serendipity here. Women were getting pregnant and coming to me and saying, I know it's because of your diet. And I would say, what? And then initially we'd say, well, it's a detox. It's we use detox a lot back then, right? Oh, it's a detox. It cleansed out your system. That's why you got pregnant. But as I started to, of course, then eventually I got married and started trying to conceive, then I started to have trouble conceiving myself. And I was still thin, but I did gain some, I think, significant amount of weight in the year that I got off the pill and was trying to conceive, particularly on my belly. So you couldn't see it, but I knew something was up. And that's when I started to do my own research and realized I must have PCOS. And so then I went to South Africa to my gynecologist. I lived in Mozambique, but my doctor was in South Africa. And I pressured him to test me, everything. I wanted to do the ultrasounds. I wanted the labs. I wanted everything. And he kept saying, no, you don't have PCOS. Look how thin you are. And that was,
Oh, that's
and
the
then
worst part when they don't diagnose you because you're too thin or you don't have ovarian cysts or, whatever. Like
All
your
visual.
period's regular, so you don't have PCOS. I mean, it's all just like,
exactly.
are we even using the criteria? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And the criteria is tricky in and of itself, right? So, I mean, it's not an easy thing to diagnose, I think. And I think all over the world, it's a little bit different. So anyway, what we know is that it's very prevalent, and we know that it is much more than a nuisance, right? It's much more serious than people give it credit for. It's associated with such serious concerns. And I don't even know that I knew this at the time because I'd never really looked into it all that much. Even at naturopathic college, I know we studied it. I knew what it was, but I'd never associated it with metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance or any of these things.
Do you know what the most researched supplement for PCOS is?
Yes, inositol.
But do you know that not all inositols are the same?
Hush your mouth.
The latest research on PCOS women uses inositol with a ratio of 40:1 myo and D-chiroinositol with a daily dosage of 4,000 milligrams.
Well, I declare.
But here's the problem. A lot of inositols out there do not use the 40:1 ratio, and many do not have a daily dosage of 4,000 milligrams. So that 1 month supply of inositol you bought may last half the time if you take the clinical dosage.
Heavens to Betsy.
Well, hold your horses, cowboy. That's why I love Ovasitol. It comes in a ratio of 40:1 myo and D-chiroinositol, and it provides a daily dosage of 4,000 milligrams. It also comes in a 3-month supply. And best of all, it's the only NSF certified 40:1 inositol, so you know that it's been third-party tested for purity and accuracy.
Well, butter my backside and call me a biscuit.
Head over to ovafit.org to order your Ovasitol today with our special 15% off promo. You can also find the link in the show description.
Well, I declare.
Okay, that's enough.
Thank God, I'm out of freezes.
So anyway, I finally get the guy to do all the testing, and because it's private medicine, I could tell him whatever I wanted, and I got whatever I wanted. And of course, full-blown frank type of PCOS, even at 100, I weighed less than 100 pounds at the time, I think. So then that's when the fertility journey started, right? The reality is that then I went home from that appointment and I thought, okay, how do these women that I work with get pregnant? And I knew that I didn't necessarily want to lose weight, but I knew that there was something. So I decided to do the detox of the detoxes. And I did that. And of course, and I discovered that actually this had been an issue because as a teenager, I remember asking my doctor why my period was so irregular. And of course, I knew nothing about ovulation then, but clearly I did know as I was trying to get pregnant that I was not ovulating. With or without a period, I knew I wasn't ovulating. Lo and behold, I do the detox of all detoxes and I ovulate and I get pregnant. But I got pregnant like within a month or two, which is what I hear so often. So I knew. I knew. What I didn't know was that I should have been worried about insulin resistance during pregnancy because I was passing this on to my child. And that's a whole other topic. I didn't know that I was going to be have more of a higher risk for pregnancy complications, which I had tons of. And so on and so forth. Fast forward 2 years. Now I have a 2-year-old. Now I want to get pregnant again. The whole problem starts all over, except
Oh,
now
really?
at this point, I am overweight, right? I've gained all the weight. At this point, I had high blood pressure, diabetes, you name it. At this point, I had everything because all the associated symptoms, right, came full force. Because understand that if I had so much insulin resistance at 100 pounds, imagine how quickly my insulin resistance developed throughout pregnancy and with
Yeah.
PCOS. So at this point, I'm in a much worse state. I go to the doctor again. I had postpartum depression. I'm in no mental space to do any sort of diets. Didn't want to, didn't even think about it. I don't even think I, again, clicked again, right? So he starts giving me fertility drugs. 6 months of it, nothing happens. No ovulation, no nothing. Then I go to my friend, my gynecologist in Mozambique, and I say to her, why isn't this working? Why am I getting pregnant? It's been 2 years, fertility drugs. And she goes, remember you have insulin resistance. Remember you have PCOS. So she gives me metformin. And of course, I
Interesting.
get pregnant right away.
Oh, because you started to manage your insulin
Yeah.
resistance immediately
Of
after.
course, immediately.
Was this pregnancy as difficult as the first one?
Yes, I had the same complications. I probably had more, to be totally fair and honest,
Oh, it just
because
went from bad to worse.
it went from bad to worse. Right. But that for me was when I went, oh, okay. Now I get it. But then I was pregnant. So, women, when we want to get pregnant, I didn't care about anything else. Now I'm pregnant.
That's
That's all that matters. I'm not going to
that's
think
the
about
thing.
anything.
It's
Yeah.
like when they say come back when you want to get pregnant. It's as if that is really the only thing that of course in that moment you want to get pregnant. That is the only thing that matters. But like even when you don't want to get pregnant, it
Nobody
seems
does
to be
anything.
the only thing that matters to the doctors. It's like
Exactly.
you're fine. Who cares about your period, facial hair, acne, your hair is falling out, you're gaining weight, whatever.
Yeah.
Let me know when you're going to get pregnant.
That's exactly it. And that's why we say not only is it extremely debilitating, but it's very, very serious, right? So all of those symptoms are extremely debilitating. Imagine being this beautiful young woman like you and I and having all of that. It's
Of
extremely
course. I
debilitating.
don't have to imagine. I lived it.
Exactly. I'm saying it to the people listening in. Imagine you and I, right?
Yeah.
What we went through as a young woman. You're still a young woman, but I mean, this having all of that you described is extremely debilitating. The mental and physical impact that has, but that is not it alone. There's all the associated concerns, and you're totally right. So when women want to get pregnant, first of all, doctors assume that PCOS is only an issue when you want to get pregnant, right? Because they're overlooking all of that, unless they have a medication to give you. Like if worried about acne, they'll give you something. If you're worried about your periods, they'll give you the pill, right? It's a very band-aid solution, not solution at all. So for me, I think it was very eye-opening, and that's why I focus so much. And when I work with women with fertility, my thing is, okay, I can help you get pregnant, but before you get pregnant, you have to get well because you
Right.
Yeah.
don't want to get pregnant with PCOS.
I had a question about metformin too. So for the second pregnancy, do you feel like if after the first pregnancy, if you were giving a proper information instructions from your doctor to focus on insulin resistance and improving your insulin sensitivity, for example, like naturally or through maybe taking supplements like berberine or inositol, do you think the second pregnancy, like a year later, would have been easier before like having to try
Oh,
metformin?
3 months later. I think that most women that I've worked with in 3 months, we can resolve with, as
Right.
you said, with the lifestyle changes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
But at the time, I wasn't in a place to do that. I didn't have
absolutely.
any
Yeah.
guidance to do that. And so I think that this was luckily it was an eye opener for me. It worked for me luckily, but it also I finally was able to say, okay, after the baby, I didn't have postpartum depression, luckily. And I said, okay, so now I'm a full-blown insulin resistance. So what's the solution? And metformin wasn't the solution that's not what I wanted to keep on doing because again, it's not addressing the root cause of the problem completely.
Yeah.
And so that's your question, Talim. Sorry, it took me so long, was when did I start fasting? That's when I started fasting. Already was doing a real food diet. Then I went into more of a, not more, completely therapeutic eating plan as well with a low carb ketogenic therapeutic from a therapeutic standpoint. It was therapeutic fasting and therapeutic ketogenic diet, and it worked for me.
What does
implemented that.
therapeutic ketogenic mean? Like keto is less than 50 grams of carbs. What's therapeutic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I didn't coin this term. I actually have heard it numerous times at conferences, low carb conferences, and I thought it was brilliant because this is what we call the type of fasting that we prescribe to our clients, therapeutic fasting. And so the idea is that people throw around the term keto and ketogenic diet all the time. But when you're looking at people that have metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance, you want to heal them. And so then you're looking at a diet that is going to be very, very specific to lowering insulin. And so it varies. And it isn't our program specifically. We don't focus on any specific diets. We work with people with any diet. We focus on fasting. But I am talking about myself. I did a strict ketogenic diet. We're talking very, very low carb, moderate protein, very high fat. I did that and I did it therapeutically. What that actually means is that you do it for a period of time.
Oh, I see.
Not the diet that I continued, but that's
Right.
what I did to reverse my insulin resistance. And then I started to learn more about fasting. And as I said, that led me, I had the experience already because I was already doing so much of this in
Yeah.
my own practice. I'm known in our program as the queen of TRE because my focus is time restricted eating. So it's full meals, no snacking. That's what I
Ooh, yeah.
work on therapeutically. And once that's been mastered, people end up
Yeah.
moving on to whatever protocol is deemed necessary. It is prescriptive, it is, you need based on our experience. You got to remember that we've got over at this point with the fasting method, over 10 years of experience working with fasting for different people, different situations.
Let's talk about what you just said. Eating full meals, no snacking. I'm a fan of this. I like to have just like one snack a day if I'm going to snack on something. And I think it's just so good for your blood sugar control. And whether or not you are fasting for how many hours, it's still good to eat full meals and not graze throughout the day, especially with PCOS. So I want you to touch on that.
Absolutely. And this is the most challenging thing when working with women with PCOS or anyone with insulin resistance, because people will have what's called rebound hypoglycemia. I know you're very aware of that, but people listening in, I don't know that people are aware of this. And so what they'll say to me is, oh, of course I can't fast because I get shaky after an hour or two. My blood sugars are actually really low. It's not their blood sugars that are low, it's their insulin that's too high. And so they're constantly going into a rebound dip, right? They get spikes and then dips, and they don't see it unless they have a CGM, continuous glucose monitor. But it really is, it's a pre-diabetic state, basically.
Mm.
And so people don't know that if you're shaky and hungry and weak and, low blood sugar all day, that you're actually on the road to diabetes. And so
Wow.
for that reason is what people tell you, oh no, I could never fast. Fasting is bad for you. Women need to eat many times a day and blah, blah, blah. They're just developing metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance because they're feeding the beast. So I call this the insulin beast. Okay. They're feeding the beast because they're constantly having this and that. And so that makes them feel, even though their blood sugar is all over the place, right? It makes them feel better because they're constantly chasing the hypos, right? They're constantly taking something in order to lower that feeling or to raise that blood sugar slightly. So I was one of these people. Once I realized that this is how I got to insulin resistance was because I fainted all the time when I was younger. And of course, you got to remember when you're that thin, people automatically assume, oh, it's because you don't eat enough or you don't eat enough sugar. And I was a sugar addict. That's all I ate. I never had a full meal in my entire life.
Oh my God.
Never, ever. I hardly ate protein because all I wanted was toast, lattes, right? I was one of these girls. Lots of candy, lots of chocolate bars. But again, when you're thin and small, it's cute, right? Because you get no, it's true. People think it's so cute. And even when I dated, I would have, the person who has the starter and the dessert, that's me. Not me anymore, but you see what I mean. And I had constant rebound hypoglycemia. I was constantly like, oh, I'm so weak. Oh, here, have some more sugar, right? And that was me constantly. And so when you deal with women with PCOS, this is what you're going to see, regardless of their size. They're going to tell you that they're tired all the time. I know you say this, and it's true. They're tired all the time. They have major cravings. They have no desire to eat real food. And that's because they're hormonally deranged. Their hormones are all over the place. And so intuitive eating is the worst thing for somebody whose hormones are all over the place, because what your body is asking you for is just horrendous food. So what you need to do, and this is where we bring in therapeutic fasting and therapeutic eating, right? What you need to do is bring that insulin level down to a manageable level so that now you can start to work on their diet. Because otherwise, they're constantly craving, constantly snacking, constantly grazing, and they're feeding the beast. It's constantly getting worse and worse because hyperinsulinemia, so high levels of insulin in your blood constantly, and this happens because of how often you eat and, of course, what you eat. And PCOS, just like PMS, is this in all these different states of adrenal concerns, right? If you're in a stress mood, if you don't sleep well, right? All of this raises your insulin. It affects your hormones, right? Starting with this cascade of cortisol. So then you've got these women who, even if they understand, even if they listen to you or me and understand and hear that, okay, full meals, no snacks is the way to go, they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as they eat, within an hour or two, they have a rebound because of what they're eating and how often they're eating and how late they're eating. So it's really a combination of things. I talk about my 5 pillars a lot, and this is what I work with people on. Time restricted eating, which is how often you eat, basically, the full meals, no snacks. What time you eat, because we do have to follow a circadian rhythm. I know we don't like it. I know a lot of people don't like it. They like to eat at night, but we need to eat before sunset.
Like 6 o'clock,
It
5:30.
depends, because in the summer, where you guys lived in Spain, you could eat much, much later in the summer. But
I
in
mean,
the
people
winter,
there
you
eat
gotta
at like
eat
9
much
o'clock.
11. Okay. I live in Portugal. My kids at this point, they finish. I was telling you about my child that does dance. She finishes dance at 10 o'clock. She eats at 10 o'clock at night.
Stop it.
Yeah,
Mind
No
blown. I'm
I know.
way.
serious.
Oh my
I'm
God.
I
serious.
know. Yeah.
They would
Yeah,
never
it's
do that
true.
here.
I remember our first
Restaurants close at like 9.
I remember our first
Exactly.
week in Barcelona where we went to dinner at like 7. The restaurant was
It was
empty.
closed. It was
Yeah,
closed.
it was just open. It was empty. We're like, did we come to a bad restaurant? I'm like looking at the Google reviews. It's a really great review restaurant. And then like 2 hours went in as we are about to leave, and it was getting packed. And that was our lesson learned,
Yeah.
like going forward.
Yeah. So you guys lived in Spain and I live still in Portugal. And this is the biggest thing that I struggle with here, because as much as I even know this, I see it in my own children. I've got one child who still eats between 5 and 6, which here is considered like, what? This is snack time. It's not
Yeah.
dinner time. She eats before she goes to her activities. Her activities are after dinner, if you can believe that. I know it's insane. But anyway, luckily, it's not like that in most Anglo-Saxonic countries, right? North America is not like that.
Yeah.
England is not like that. I mean, not that, you know, you would hope that they would be doing better metabolically. They're not, but it's for
Yeah.
many other reasons.
I know, right? It's a
It's
full.
because they have dinner
Right.
early, but then they snack into the night,
Right.
right?
Right.
And where's the I think the Portuguese and the Spanish, they eat mostly at meals, and they eat. You know, there's that food order. They do eat in that food order. They eat their veggies first, and then the protein,
Yeah.
and then they only eat the carbs at the end. So they have a much better food order.
What were the other 3 pillars?
Yeah.
Cut you
So
off.
it's
Yeah.
how often you eat, right? TRE, full meals, no snacks. What time you eat, talking about the circadian rhythm. Really just not try and reinvent the wheel ever here. None of what I'm going to tell you, I
Yeah.
made up myself. This is like, let's just go back to a more
Yeah.
harmonious way, right? And so eating before sunset. The other one is what you eat. So it's diet.
Okay.
And I have my food pyramid that we use as a resource. It's it's basically an insulin index, basically. And then it's stress and sleep management.
Okay.
And everything else fits in here. It really does. Like there's not one thing that probably we could talk about that doesn't fit into one of these.
The first one is
Time restrict.
how
Sorry.
often the first
Yeah.
one.
How often? Yeah.
How often you
TRE,
eat. So breakfast,
TRE.
lunch, dinner, no snacks. Second one is what time you eat. Finish your meals before sunset.
Yeah.
The third one is what you eat. I'd say try going gluten and dairy free, anti-inflammatory
Like
diet.
protein,
High
how much carbs you're
protein.
having.
Right. Keeping your insulin nice and low.
That's right.
Stress
And it's all about the
management.
insulin.
Yes. Stress management. And then sleep, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're the same, right? Of course, you
Right.
and I know that they're the same, but it's important to mention that because I always say people got to keep their eye on the ball, right? So when we talk about stress and sleep management, again, we're talking about hormones. And all of these things, we're talking about how to manage your hormones and how directly or indirectly it impacts your insulin production. Because again, insulin goes up, the more hyperinsulinemic you become, right? The more insulin resistant you're going to become. And then the more expressions of insulin resistance you're going to have. And PCOS is just one of the many expressions, right? Obesity is another one. So if you have both obesity and PCOS, it's not because one causes the other. It's because they have the same root cause. They're
Right.
cousins, I always say. So you don't have to have one to have the other. That's what people often miss, expression of insulin resistance. And so to me, I'm a very practical person. It's like if the problem is insulin, high insulin, then the solution is to lower insulin. And we know how to lower insulin, or at least we should. I don't think that everybody knows, but we know.
So before I ask you a question about fasting and we dive into that, I want to ask you if someone's listening and they are eating snacks at night, they feel like they have hypoglycemia all the time. That's why they always keep snacks in their bags. And, it's really hard to eat 3 meals a day and they're not used to it and they have fatigue and poor quality sleep. And that gives them anxiety and stress. Like, where do they start? What would you tell them right now if they walked into your office and was like, what do you mean 3 meals a day? I'm starving all the time. My hormones are all over the place.
Well, that is what I do. All right. That's my focus. That's my objective. For me, it's easy because we have a method, right? We have a program. And so people have to go through, depending on what they choose, whether they're part of the community or they're part of coaching or they do the master classes. I've got a full master class on TRE, teaching people how to do TRE. And of course, the major thing that's addressed there is why can some people not do TRE, right? Why can some people not do? And so then we have to address, there's strategies. One of my strategies is called plating. So this idea of how to eat, like you actually have to sit down at a table and eat and mindfully eat, not eat on the go. Like I've got this whole thing where you don't eat from a fridge, you don't eat from a package, you don't eat while you're working, you don't eat in your car. You have to eat in front of a plate. So I call it plating. And you got to you either have to set the table or you have to put it on your plate. Like it's fine for me if you have all your pots and pans, although this is totally against my culture, but it's fine for me if you have all your pots and pans on your table and you serve yourself as many times, but you have to plate. You do have to eat sitting down at a table or a makeshift table. I don't care where you are.
I like this.
But
Yeah.
I like the ritual. of
Yeah,
it.
ritual. Yeah.
Like we
you know
eat
why? Because
dinner-
you probably grew up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like definitely ingrained in our culture. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. There are times that you eat. Your body needs to eat at these times. My dad comes home from work for lunch really quick and then goes back. Me and Sirak, like we eat dinner with a plate. Yes, in front of the TV, but like eventually when we have kids, we won't. But like that's the
Or
thing.
so you say, right? Because my kids, they'll want to stick their iPad, and it's
I
it's
know.
always going to be a fight. But
But,
at least you're aware of it, right?
Yeah, like when
we're
I was
constantly
little,
fighting this. Yeah,
when I was little, it was not like in front of the TV. It was like the four
never.
kids would sit at the dinner table. The table would be set, like it would be protein, carb, and fiber,
That's right.
whatever the meal was, and dinner was a thing. And then you would pack the rest for lunch tomorrow. Like no one skipped a
right.
meal,
Yeah. And so when I say to you, I'm not reinventing the wheel, I'm really not. And unfortunately, for some people, they don't have that recollection. They don't have that cultural reference
Right.
like I do and like you do, because their parents already didn't eat at a table. Their grandparents maybe didn't eat at a table.
Yeah.
And so when they're hearing this, it's sounding like whatever, but really, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We are supposed to eat that way. All cultures, when there is a culture, they eat that way for many reasons, but this is you're never going to be able to do TRE unless you do something like that, because there's no way that you're going to have a full satiating meal. There's no way that you're going to be able to actually probably have a complete meal unless you do it that way. The other thing besides that is looking at what you're eating. I mentioned the food order. Food order is very important. If you start your meal with carbs, you're going to have a much higher insulin rise. And here is the root cause of rebound hypoglycemia. I don't think I said that. It's raising your insulin too much when you're eating, regardless of how much your blood sugar is going up. So even if you have a CGM, you may go, oh, my blood sugar didn't go up that much with this meal. It's not the blood sugar, it's the insulin, which you can't see on the CGM. The only thing that you can see is the rebound. If your blood sugar drops too much or too quickly. And you don't need a CGM to see that. You know how you feel. So if you're telling me that after a meal you're shaky and you need to snack and graze, then I know you have rebound hypoglycemia. Then that means that whatever you're eating, however you're eating, you're raising your insulin too much. Insulin's main job, one of its main jobs, is to go into the blood and take out the sugar and store it in your liver, fat, and muscles, right? So that's not what you want, but that's what you're doing. So now we have to look at what you're eating and how you're eating. So that's the number one thing. So for me to work on any kind of fasting, I first have to work on how people are eating and what they're eating.
Yeah. And I feel like with PCOS, like time restricted eating, not telling someone not to snack at night is really a stressful ask.
Hard.
But when you give them that knowledge that you're providing, in this episode, and that tool where they can really restructure their meals during the day, then it feels more possible
But you got to
to
take away the
fast at
rebound
night.
hypoglycemia, right? You have
Yeah.
to take away because if they have the rebound hypoglycemia, their body is sending them a message of danger, right? So hormones are messengers. So you have to change the message, because if people are getting rebound hypoglycemia, so me telling somebody, listen, just don't snack, it's not helpful. Because if they're getting rebound hypoglycemia, myself, when I get, because I still get rebound hypoglycemia, if I didn't plate, if I ate this before that, I know, right? But if I get rebound hypoglycemia, I need to eat, because it's a danger signal and you feel extremely unwell, regardless of how low, or your blood sugar might not even be that low, but it just dropped very quickly.
Don't
I
put
need to-
yourself in that
That's
situation
right.
in the
I need to
first
take-
place.
That's right. We need
Yeah.
to take away the rebound hypoglycemia. And again, that's looking at insulin.
Is there something specific you eat when that happens to you, just to kind of help you rebound
Yeah,
or help
what's-
you recover?
in
What
that
you
moment.
eat or what I end up eating.
No, I mean,
You
like-
should eat.
Yeah, what you should eat. Yeah.
Because you know
we-
why I'm saying that, right? Because in that danger mode, in that message, what you want is carbs, is sugar.
Correct. Yeah. But do you like maybe have carbs and pair it with some sort of protein and healthy
Right.
fats to help that slow absorption?
So in that situation, right, you don't want to have naked carbs, because you're just going to perpetuate the rebound hypoglycemia. So you got to dress it, as many experts say, right? You got to dress it with protein, fat, and fiber. Yeah. So for example, I won't go off and have fruit by itself. I'll have it with something. So the meals, right? The order of meals, you want to start with your fiber, veggies. And for me, this is easy, right? I don't know about your culture, guys, but in my culture, in Portugal, every single adult and child starts their meal with either a veggie or a soup.
Interesting. We don't really do that.
We don't
It's
start-
cultural.
We
Yeah.
just put it all on our plate and eat it.
Yeah.
Know.
Which is,
But-
I think at some point cultures, they had the olives, or there was this at some
Yeah.
point in every culture. And so Portuguese still do this. They still have their soup mostly, or salad.
Actually,
but-
we do. Meze, like when you
Yes, I
go
do.
eat Greek food, and
Yeah. Like tapas.
those first little bites that
Yeah.
you have are usually
Fibrous.
something fibrous.
Yeah.
That's
From
right.
what I can remember,
That's
or
right.
protein based.
I think
but not
most,
carbs.
if we were to look back, exactly, it's fiber, right? Some type of veggie type of thing, followed by protein,
Yeah,
and then the carbs at the end. I know that even Asian cultures, I know that, like, I remember, I know that it's like at this point they say, oh, in fancier, Chinese circles, it's you eat all of the protein and the vegetables, and they only give you rice at the very end if people are hungry. It's like rice is like a thing like that you give, it's more like, it's almost like to feed the hungry sort of thing.
Mm.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
at the very end.
Like if you
And
must.
If you must, yeah. If there's room, if you're feeling hungry still. And so then your insulin response is totally different. Whereas if
Yeah.
you talk about dairy. Dairy is a difficult one in my program, because people are like, what do you mean no dairy? Because they're coming from a keto world, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of dairy in the keto diet, and in a lot of keto diets. And it's like, if you're very, very insulin resistant, you're going to have a very big insulin reaction to dairy.
Hmm.
And so even though your blood sugar might not go up, and this is what's tricky, if you've got a CGM and you're checking your blood sugar, you may not have a huge rise in blood sugar, but then you see that drop. That's because you've produced too much insulin. And most people with PCOS or any severe form of insulin resistance are going to have a big reaction to dairy, even if they don't see it.
I was actually just reading about how it can trigger hyperandrogenism, high testosterone, and also eating earlier can help reduce high testosterone and high insulin levels by like 50% or something, according
Eating
to one of
earlier?
these studies. Yeah, like not snacking at night and having an earlier dinner, like a 6 p.m. type of
Oh, I
dinner,
see.
and eating most of your meal for lunch and less calories for dinner significantly improves your insulin and testosterone levels along with going dairy free. And I actually tried eating that way for the past few weeks, and I've never had better skin in my life. Like I'm acne
Well,
prone,
this is a so let's talk about that because this is the big part, the first part of our book. Our book has various parts. The last part is like the diet and the recipes and all of that, right? But the first part is the hormonal part. You have to understand that the abnormal testosterone in women with PCOS is because of insulin. It's the insulin that impacts your liver and your ovaries to produce the various levels of the hormones that are disrupting. And then you have a higher expression. Even if you don't have higher lab values of testosterone, you will have more free testosterone running around. That's why you have the hair and the acne and all of that. So I just finished going over my 5 pillars, right? Which is the 5 things that raise insulin: eating more often, eating later. Of course, if you raise your insulin more, then you're going to have more testosterone. So all the things that I said about insulin, you're recognizing and confirming to people about testosterone, because it's the insulin that causes the abnormal androgens in
yeah,
women with PCOS.
yeah. So
And so, of
interesting.
course, if you have a high reaction to dairy, which most people with insulin resistance do, then the more dairy you eat, the more insulin you're going to have, the more testosterone you're going to have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Free testosterone.
For me, going dairy free was life changing, but it did take a few weeks to see the results because my acne was so bad. And obviously, that's not going to go away overnight. So I really had to like commit for several weeks to see my face clear up. But as for like eating most of your calories at lunch and a lighter dinner and an earlier dinner and like having a good fasting window, the results are overnight, like
They
the
are.
next
Yeah, you feel
day.
better
Even
immediately.
in blood sugars, but even
Yeah.
diabetics see this. Like a diabetic's morning blood sugar, which is a very telling number, right? The fasting blood sugar tells you your insulin resistance, basically.
Yeah.
A diabetic skipping one dinner or eating earlier one day or cutting dairy one day, their
Mhm.
blood sugars the next morning will be significantly lower. But
Yeah,
it's a very
incredible.
hard conversation to have with people.
Oh, yeah. So if anyone who's listening wants to try this, I'm telling you, like, just be like, okay, tonight I'm gonna have an early light dinner. We're gonna start this thing tomorrow. You're gonna feel different tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
But
you do
it's
you
hard,
okay.
right? Again, because the rebound hypoglycemia. If you have a dinner in the wrong food order,
Oh,
or if
yeah.
you have too much
Yeah.
carbs or too much dairy or too much of any of the things that are going to create an insulin response, within an hour or two, you're
You'll
like dying. And then
right.
you're going to bed hungry. I mean, it's just very
No.
hard.
Yeah.
So you have to learn that your meal has to be rich and satiating. You have to have enough fiber, you have to have enough protein, you have to have enough healthy fat in order to mitigate that insulin response, in order to satiate you. And then if you want, or whatever space you have left at the end, you put in whatever your carb, you're gonna have to figure this out. It takes planning and preparation, because I don't necessarily enforce a ketogenic diet. That's not even part of our program. We're not a ketogenic program, but a lot of people do follow, at least during a therapeutic phase, because it takes away the hypoglycemia right away.
I was gonna ask too, do you recommend like CGMs or continuous glucose monitors? Do you find them to be like to help people see the impact of their changes, like what we were talking about earlier, eating earlier? If maybe someone has a CGM and they see that their insulin levels are better the next morning, do you find that to be a good motivating factor, or is it information overload in some cases?
It can be. I don't necessarily, I don't prescribe it. I don't recommend it, because we don't give medical advice. Even as a naturopath, because I work online, we don't give medical advice. But what I do, I use myself. I'll wear a CGM and then I'll just post it and monitor and show, in my groups, in my masterclass that I'm doing right now in June, the first week of June, the CGM graphs are mine. And so I think, like, no, you don't have to do it because I'm showing you, right? And as long as you agree that I'm not an alien and you're not an alien, so we're, as long as we agree that we're a lot more like my friends than we are different, right? Like Maya Angelou says, then you don't have to wear a CGM. You could look at the CGM evidence out there. if people know how to read a CGM, I actually use a CGM to infer insulin, right? I look at and I show people, I'll say, okay, I just ate a fruit. I have images of this. I just ate a fruit by itself. Okay. Look at the rise and then look at the drop. Within an hour, my blood sugar is now lower than it was before that apple. Don't eat an apple by itself. Things like that, right?
Yeah.
Why you shouldn't have naked carbs, why you get rebound hypoglycemia if you have meals like that or snacks like that, right? And then I'll show them a meal that has fiber, fat, and protein. And then you see this very minor glucose, but then you see this long and slow drop. That means that you had a very small insulin production because it's insulin that takes the sugar away. So if you got a big drop, then that means that you produce a lot of insulin, right? You have to be able to infer this. And I think CGMs are great for that. So unless you know how to read that, then don't get a CGM. Let me put it on and show you, or somebody else and show you and explain it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then going back
Because
to
if you're not, sorry to interrupt you again, if
No
you're
worries.
not diabetic, then you're not going to get much out of it, because then you're looking at it and you're like, look, my blood sugar is not that high. And look, it even went low really quickly. Isn't that good? Because supposedly diabetics take a long time for their blood sugar to lower, right? But what happens with me and what I'm showing is that within 2 hours, my blood sugar is back to normal. So that's good. It doesn't take 5 hours for it to go back to normal. But if I don't want it to go lower than what it was before and quickly, then I can't have a high insulin response. So if people can read that and understand, because people are often very confused, they think blood sugar and insulin are the same thing. They're not the same thing, right? One is a hormone and one is a molecule in your blood, like a sugar molecule in your blood. So they're two different things. The sugar molecule in your blood asks your body to produce this hormone, which then, again, the hormone is a messenger. It tells your body what to do with the sugar.
Right. When you have too much of it, you get hungrier.
That's
It
right.
blocks fat burning.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the ketogenic diet from earlier because that was really interesting. I wrote it down. You were talking about therapeutic ketogenic diets where people do it for short terms and then they see a lot great benefits and then they transition to a normal diet or some maybe to the 5 pillars mainly. I was gonna ask about the transition because in a lot of cases we see PCOS women go on ketogenic diets and then they see great results after a short period and then when they get off, in some cases they gain the weight back or they feel like they kind of went back to square one. How do you recommend like transitioning in that from that therapeutic ketogenic diet to a standard diet where they don't get those gain the weight back? Because that's one of the reasons why we don't generally talk about it is because we see that happen
Yes.
and we like it's good to educate others to see how they can
Absolutely.
kind of transition.
I think it's a number of things, but you're right. It's going back to the 5 pillars. One is making people realize from the beginning and then post ketogenic and post therapy that TRE is necessary. Full meals, no snacks, and by then it's very easy because by then they're used to it. They know how to do it. They're used to fasting longer. So doing 2 or 3 meals a day is a piece of cake, right? It's like a party every day, right? So is that whole recognition that for maintenance you need TRE. We all need TRE. Okay. The other thing is continuing to eat early. Not to say that you can't go to a party here and there, but that's not going to be your everyday. Okay. And then you said this, you said that very well because it triggered a thought in me, which is what's the standard American diet? Is that really what you want to go back to and not develop insulin resistant metabolic syndrome again and gain weight? No, you don't want to go to the standard American diet. What you want is a real food diet. And a real food diet doesn't have to be ketogenic or low carb. You want a one ingredient, whole food, unpackaged, unprocessed diets. You want to cook most of your meals. I did a video a while back about one thing, which in my culture, and and maybe your culture is still like that, but in Portugal is still very much like this, is that everybody makes their own sauces, for example. So you don't have any packaged sauces. That's a big thing.
That's how
In
our
North
moms are.
America, we eat tons of sauces, right? We eat
That's
tons
true.
of salad dressing or
marinade.
this
Yeah.
sauce for your chicken wings or whatever it is. Right there, you're going to have a problem because it's going to
Just
be a
ruin the
highly
chicken.
processed, yeah, it's a highly processed, high sugar or sweetener type of diet. So
Yeah.
I think that it's just a whole I know may sound overwhelming for those of you guys listening, but as I said, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just going back to what we're supposed to be doing. I know we have no time. I know women are overworked. That's a whole other issue.
Mhm.
But, you want to have your salad with your homemade vinaigrette.
Yeah.
if that's not available to you, which it should be.
Olive
But if it
oil,
isn't,
balsamic.
that's right. Olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and salt. Like this is what all Portuguese eat.
It's
Same.
delicious
Okay.
too.
That's all my mom makes
But
anyways.
this is
Yeah.
like, if you were to give my mother or my, she's now deceased, my grandmother a salad dressing and a salad, she would be like, what the heck is this? Right. But things like that, right? So when I talk about going back to a whole food, I'm not necessarily talking about a low carb or ketogenic diet, but you see, it takes a lot more thought, and so, and even to pass this on to your children, to the next generation, right?
Mm.
My kids they love sauces too, mind you, I was raised in Canada. I'm a junk food addict, was a junk food addict. I'm aware of it, I need to stay away from that stuff because like you guys, I can't control it. So I stick to real food. I
Mhm.
avoid because
I know.
if you think you're going to control junk food, you're not.
It's in control of you. They scientifically
completely-
make it to do
That's right.
whatever to your blood sugar and insulin
That's
levels and hormones,
right.
so you're addicted to it.
That is
You
exactly
won't
it.
win.
So it's not that I have a stronger willpower than you, any of you listening. I don't. If I have one of those same things that you have, I'll have 100.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a whole food. And so if I don't have it, here's the other thing. If I don't have it, I don't feel deprived. I just don't crave it.
Yeah.
The reason why people feel deprived and crave it is because we're constantly trying to moderate it and have it all the
Right.
time. No, guys.
Oh, I
come
don't
on.
even bring it into
I
the house.
yeah.
I like
It's a
some
hard thing.
things. I try I like the sweet Lorenz, like, maybe I'll buy one of her cookie things and like put it in the freezer and stuff. But there are certain brands, like if we're at a party and I have a Dorito, it's like, oh my God, this tastes so good.
Yeah, right. If
how
I'm
do
at
you
a party
stop
and I
yourself?
have a Dorito, I'm that person, me and my kids, right next to the bowl, because it's addictive. It's addictive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even
The
like the
more
healthy
insulin.
chips.
Even
Yeah.
the
Sorry.
healthy
Like
chips got addicted.
yeah, like you got me one of those healthy chips, and like the other day I almost finished the bag. I was because it's like air,
Yeah, I
it
don't
feels like
do
it's
that stuff,
air.
guys. I'll be honest with you. I don't do substitutes. I don't do sweeteners
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I don't fool myself. I don't feed the insulin beast. I just
Yeah.
don't. I don't
You're
do any of
aware of
that.
what it's doing and
Yeah.
it makes
And
sense
it's I don't want you guys
blocking out.
listening or you guys thinking that I'm this again alien and perfect person. What that means is that when I eat stuff, I eat stuff. I
Yeah.
don't fool myself into, oh, I'll have a healthy this and a healthy that because it has the exact same impact on my insulin.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't like how I feel. So when I go to a party and I have whatever it is, I have it. I'm aware of it. I know what I'm doing. I know how to recover from it. This is another thing. The recovery plan is something I often talk about.
That's always good so that you can live your life, but be aware of what's going on at the same time.
Right. But as your coach, right? If I were your coach and as a health consultant, what I often tell people is we're going to have to make a commitment here to the healing. If you're coming to me
Oh,
to
yeah.
heal your PCOS, we're going to heal it. And we're
Mhm.
going to heal it within 3 to 6 months. So we're going to make a commitment, the same commitment that we would make for any other chronic illness, right? When people unfortunately have cancer and they have to do chemotherapy, they don't take breaks. They commit, as much as it sucks, they commit and they do their therapy. When they have some kind of torn ligament or whatever, and they have to do physical therapy, they commit. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm not talking about longevity. I'm not talking about how to maintain. I'm not talking about going to parties. I'm talking about what are we going to do over the next 3 to 6 months to heal during the therapeutic journey. And so even though I always say nobody's journey is linear, even within those 3 to 6 months, there's going to be things that happen and we have holding patterns and recovery plans. We got to keep our eye on the ball because in the past we've had people, those people that you probably have in your community too, right? That you've been following for 6 years and they're at the exact same place that they were 6 years ago. And you feel for them and you feel like you have failed them because you somehow haven't gotten them to address their concern in a swift manner.
It gets difficult. You want to help everyone, like individually, but there's just 1 in 5 women with PCOS.
There's a
We
lot
do
that
our
we can do.
podcast.
You got to keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing
Yeah.
what you're doing. You're helping a lot.
Yeah.
You too. Your book is amazing, and this podcast episode was amazing. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk to you again. This was a really good episode.
Yeah.
I love what we talked about. I loved that you mentioned rebound hypoglycemia. Like we've really covered some stuff that we haven't talked about in a while. So thank you so much.
Same here. Thanks, guys. This was great.
Oh, absolutely. And if someone wants to get in touch or work with you, where can they find your website?
So I said I'm still in, will continue to be with the fastingmethod.com program. So the fastingmethod.com. What I do a lot of now is like small 3-day masterclasses. I find those to be very helpful. People need very specific instruction on various topics. So we talked today a lot about TRE, time restricted eating, full meals, no snacks, how to establish that first. We have masterclasses on, intermittent fasting, therapeutic fasting. We have masterclasses on how to eat, what to eat. So I'm doing that one in June. It's the masterclass in early June is going to be on actually what to eat.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, we
Awesome.
highly recommend everyone to sign up for those master classes as you learn a lot. And thank you again for joining us today on this podcast. We can't wait to have you back again. I think we're not gonna wait years for the next one.
We won't wait for you.
We'll be back. I think you'll be back this year if you can make it.
Oh, I said yes right away. So thank you guys for the
Awesome.
invite.
Thank
Yes.
you.
All right,
absolutely.
Take care. Really good seeing you. Bye.
Talk to you
Likewise.
soon.
Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. What if you had an app for PCOS that could tell you what to eat, when to work out, and how to track your goals every day?
Introducing the Sisterhood app. Not only does the Sisterhood app give you access to the largest community of women with PCOS, but it also provides you with a daily PCOS plan.
Your daily PCOS plan tells you exactly what to eat for each meal of the day. It's like having me as a dietitian in your pocket. It also sends you a notification when it's time to work out, and it provides step-by-step videos to help you reverse your biggest PCOS symptoms.
You also get access to 100 plus gluten and dairy-free recipes, the 5 Steps to PCOS Weight Loss Masterclass, and a full PCOS-friendly workout library to choose from.
But let's not forget the most crucial component of PCOS weight loss, the support. You're not alone. In the Sisterhood, you become part of the largest community of PCOS women where you can chat with us in our private Facebook group. Sirak, myself, and your fellow sisters are in there every day to answer your questions and support you along the way.
So what are you waiting for? You can head over to the App Store and search Sisterhood, or click the link in the description to get started today.
See you in there.